All right, before we get back into Christian evidences, I need to make this quick announcement. I keep forgetting to put this in the bulletin, but Jerry Martin from CrossFit texted me a couple weeks ago and told me this, and then Tracy reminded me this past week, and I still forgot to put it in the bulletin. But at the Knapp Avenue congregation in Baxter at 6:30 every Thursday night, they do this every year. It's the Arkwood School of Biblical Studies. Brother Jerry Martin from CrossFit, from Pine Street congregation CrossFit, is teaching Revelation. And I haven't been to the last several classes. I don't know what book they're on, what chapter they're on in the book of Revelation now. But he's an excellent teacher, and I plan on trying to go to some of these classes, certainly, before he's finished. But if you want to go to that, we're going to have a bulletin next week, but I wanted to mention it because I told him I would, and I keep forgetting about it. So, Christian evidences. Last week we talked on, or we still talked some about the flood, and we got into some things about fossils, and I believe the week before last week we were even talking about the flood then. We got into the flood of Noah, and the flood of Noah is evidence for Christianity, because what an atheist says took millions of years to form. We can explain that with one giant catastrophic event, which was the flood. We saw there in Genesis where the fountains of the deep were opened, and so these fountains of the deep, these different volcanoes even, and fountains of water coming up from the ground and from the bottoms of the ocean, and the water coming from the top, certainly was the most catastrophic event that ever happened to this planet. So a lot of the different things that evolutionists say are millions of years old are due to the flood, not millions of years. We don't have millions of years. That doesn't fit into the six-day creation in Genesis, and we certainly covered that thoroughly. And then we talked about apparent age of the earth. God created the earth with age. He created humans fully grown, not babies. So he created probably trees that were already grown, and certainly an earth that already had, we might call age to it whenever he created it new. So certainly that would take place in dating the earth. We can't really date it properly, and that's what happens is all those things and different environments that could have taken place over the years are taken out of the equation when someone who does not believe in God, wants to go against the Bible, tries to date rocks and the earth and different things like that. Now we talked to the flood, evidence for creation, certainly, or for the Bible being true, and all sorts of evidences there. But in talking about the flood, it seems necessary to mention this fellow right here I'm about to mention. You might have seen him. He's been gone for a while, but I think his influence might still be around. This fellow right here, we're talking about the ark. This is Mr. Ron White. Mr. Ron White, he was, he's called the Indiana Jones of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. He's not a member of the church. He's not a Christian. He was Seventh-day Adventist. But Mr. Ron White, he died in 99. But his influence, I think, might still be around. Although, if you want to look him up, there's way more information against him than I'm going to tell you right here. But this right here is an article from Brother Wayne Jackson. He was a gospel preacher in the church and wrote a really good article talking about Ron White years ago. Probably when his ideas were more prevalent than now. But Ron White, he was a nurse and ethicist, made a lot of money and could afford pretty much whatever he wanted. And he decided to go to over to the Turkey, modern day Turkey, and to a site where this rock formation was, and claimed that he found Noah's Ark. Now, don't believe 1 second that this man found Noah's Ark for a couple of reasons. Let me see here. For a couple of reasons. For one, no one over there believed him whenever he said he found Noah's Ark. None of the Israelis or anyone in Turkey, none of them believed him. Number two, he said that, for one, he said that God gave him a vision of when to go out and look for this ark in this said place. Well, we know as New Testament Christians, God doesn't give people visions today. Our only communication with God is through, or as far as Him telling us something, what to do, is through His Word, His inspired Word that we have. And He certainly doesn't understand that either. He didn't. He was Seventh-day Adventist, so he wasn't a New Testament Christian. But I want you to, well, I'll get rid of that. Yeah. All right. Read with this. This is someone from over there, over there in Jerusalem, said about him. He said, Mr. Ron White is neither an archaeologist nor has he ever carried out a legally licensed excavation in Israel or Jerusalem. In order to excavate, one must have at least a BA in archaeology, and he did not possess that, despite his claims. He lied about multiple things. Aware of his claims, which border on the absurd, and they have no scientific basis whatsoever. They fall in the category of trash, what he calls it, which one finds in the town. I'm not sure what that is, such as all those different things. I'm not sure what all that means, but just read what this fellow said to say that they didn't believe him over there in the Middle East about his claims and what he found. I don't want to spend too terribly long on talking about him. It's not too terribly important. But certainly wouldn't want members of the church to see his claims and believe them, or believe there's some kind of substance to them. And here's the last thing I'll say about it. So he wasn't even an actual archaeologist himself. He just was barely maybe an amateur archaeologist. But here's, if anything else you see from Ron White back in his day isn't enough proof, here is what I believe would be enough proof that he was a liar, at the very least, about the things he found. He didn't just say he found Noah's Ark. He said he found all of these things. Noah's home, inscription at the site, fence from Noah's farm. I'm not going to read every one of them. You can go to Wayne Jackson. If you look up Ron White, Wayne Jackson's article is one of the first things that pops up on Google. But I do want to mention this one down here. He said he found a sampling of Christ's dry blood, very last one, a sampling of Christ's dry blood proving the doctrine of the virgin birth by means of a chromosome count. I don't even know how that works. That's pretty silly. But those are the things this man claimed to find. A lot of people over the years believed him, and they even still, or do still believe him today. Often they run across things that he allegedly found. If one archaeologist in the Middle East or anywhere finds one major thing throughout an entire life of archaeology, that's a big deal. It's a really big deal. So for him to claim to have found even more than one is absurd in itself. But we will not give him any more of our time. Look at that, even exited that out of accident. Okay, so we won't give him any more of our time. But also to say, and speaking of Christian evidences, we don't need, there's many things that have been found that we can read about in the Bible, and that is one evidence for Christianity. When you read the other religions books, and specifically what I think of is the Book of Mormon. The Book of Mormon that Joseph Smith wrote, supposedly inspired by God, has all these different places it mentions here in the Americas, in North and South America, that the Native Americans supposedly had. And we can't find any evidence for any of those places that Joseph Smith wrote about. But when we read the Bible, you can go to the Middle East, to Israel, and you can see all these same places. Now all of them don't look the same as they did back in Bible times. Certainly don't have all of them. But these things we read about in Scripture are real places where real people lived. They're not fabricated. When we're reading the Bible, it's not a history book, but certainly anything that it says historical is true. And the Bible's not a science book, but anything the Bible talks about science is true. We can rely on it, although we can't always rely on our scientists. Sometimes they're not much scientists. We can't rely on them. So the flood, evidence for creation. Now, we started talking about fossils last week, and we talked about that coelacanth. That was a fish that was found on, well, a fish they believed to be extinct because it was fossilized, and because it used to be an idea that fossils, it took millions of years for fossils to form. Well, then, I think it was back in the 90s, I don't remember, I read it week before last, but they found this same fish that was fossilized, still living, off the coast of South Africa. Some people snorkeling, or scuba diving, not snorkeling, he was deep, found this coelacanth. That's the same thing that's fossilized there. So fossils don't take billions of years to form. They may take 1,000 years to form, or they may take a few years, fossils. And in fact, there are, right now, we're about to talk about that in a second, up in Mount St. Helens, there are in the Spirit Lake, there in Washington, I believe, there are trees that are fossilizing right now that were pushed into this lake after a volcano eruption. But fossils, let me show you what I have here. I just so happen to find two what are considered fossils. I did verify that. Pieces of petrified wood this year. Well, I found one, my father-in-law found the other one. And I looked up, they are considered fossils because it's wood that's been fossilized. That's what petrified wood is. Now, if you're a geologist, you can look at this and tell me if I'm right on what it is. But when I researched that, this looks like it's petrified wood. But when I found them, I thought, that's very interesting. I wonder how long, wood takes to petrify. And I looked it up, and it said anywhere from 10 to several million years. That's a pretty big gap, man. I don't know if it took 10 years for this to fossilize, or it took 100 years, or longer. But I know it didn't take millions of years because we've established we don't have millions of years. But it shows the absurdity in millions of years. How do you jump from 10 years to millions of years? You can't even fathom millions of years. Some other examples here. We're right there at the top part of this right here. In Germany, there's I couldn't find information on this, researching it, other than what I have here. But there was pilings of a recently man-made bridge. The last 100 years had become coal. And they had to fix the bridge with metal supports. I did find some other information on these couple of things. In Tasmania, a miner's hat that had been submerged in a flooded mine, and it had been submerged for 50 years. From the mine flooded in 1945, and the miners, none of them died, I don't think, but they left many of their things, and apparently this fellow left his hat, and in 1995, that mine was excavated, and they found this miner's hat found in that mine. So 50 years, this hat became fossilized. I don't know if wood can fossilize that fast, but certainly didn't take millions of years. Now used to, it was believed, and still often believed, that it takes millions of years for something to fossilize. And in western Texas, this was in Tasmania, that's down south of Australia, but in western Texas, a foot, which had been fossilized, was found inside a rubber boot. And I did look that one up as well. I didn't pull pictures up of that. I didn't think anybody, you can look it up yourself if you want to. It's not gruesome, but it is a foot inside of a boot that's fossilized. So, but it was found in 1980, and boots like this that they found started to be made in 1936. You're talking about even less amount of time that maybe even a lot less amount of time that this was possibly. Depending on how old this boot was, when they started making them in 36. So it could have taken a lot less time. All right. In fact, one person said the boot could have been from the 50s instead of from the late 30s. So fossils don't take millions of years. So if you look up how long it takes if you find a fossil of some sort, or petrified wood like I did, don't believe what you read on the internet. Now this place here is Mount St. Helens. Mount St. Helens is a example of a catastrophic event that can cause a lot of change in just a very short amount of time. So you're talking about just a day or so that this took to reshape this land the way it is. Here's Mount St. Helens, whenever it was, it's a national park now, I guess it was before as well. It took off the whole, when it erupted, it took off the entire, in 1980, it took off the whole top of the mountain. Now imagine what the flood, whenever all the fountains of the deep and everything were happening, imagine what that could have done. I mean, maybe that, the flood, no, they get, maybe it pushed up some mountains in some way, maybe it cut down mountains. Maybe mountains were taller before the flood of Noah. We don't really know exactly, but certainly if this just localized eruption could cause such a catastrophic event, such a catastrophe, certainly the flood of Noah could cause much more globally. And there's all the wood I was talking about that's in Spirit Lake, right there by Mount St. Helens. And all that wood was pushed in there by this volcano eruption, and this wood is just slowly, or not slowly compared to the ideas about fossilization, but it's compared to millions of years, it's rapidly fossilizing and sinking to the bottom of the lake. All these pieces of wood, these trees that fall into the lake, and they've just been left alone and preserved. I don't think you can even go down there close to them in that park. This is a picture of the forest, or a forest right here. Around Mount St. Helens, it looked like this before it looked like this before the eruption. It looked like this after the eruption. The same post there. So certainly no problem for the flood to cause all the changes we see that evolution may try to explain to have taken millions of years. Dating methods of evolution use circular reasoning, really not evidence. They find a rock formation, and they say, well, this is how old this is, and then they base everything they find on that off of what they decided that rock formation is, how old it is. So you ask them, well, how do you know how old this fossil is? Well, it came from this section right here, and this, I forget the word, strata, that is what they call it. So well, how do you know how old the strata is? Well, because this is how old the fossil is. That's a circular reasoning. It's not reliable. There's more to that. You could find yourself if you would like. There's some more things here I didn't plan on getting into, I don't think, tonight. Let's see. Here's something else about those fossils. The evolutionist errors are based upon circular reasoning that fossils are in rocks from certain periods of time. So anywhere those fossils are found, the rocks must be that old, and vice versa. So that's the circular reasoning we were discussing there, or I just mentioned about evolution. I believe I already mentioned this here, but I'll mention it again. Everybody might not been here. The reason this is important to talk about these Christian evidences is because the idea that the earth is millions of years old, which came from the idea of evolution, comes from the idea of evolution, is very prevalent, and even many Bible-believing people fall for that idea. And children are certainly even more susceptible to it because that's what's in the textbooks in their schools, because of public school, maybe even a private school of some sort. Here's some questions you could ask your children or grandchildren, or even yourself, to see if you've been affected by or infected. Here is the word used by this dangerous doctrine of evolution. How old is the earth? Well, the Bible says thousands of years. Evolution says millions of years. Is the Bible myth or fact? Most probably people would definitely say fact, but if you believe the earth is millions of years old, then you don't believe that Genesis 1 is a fact. You would believe that Genesis 1 is a myth, whether you admit it or not. The dinosaurs and man lived at the same time. That's what we'll get in. That's what we'll talk about next week, which will be more interesting than I was about to get into tonight. We don't have time for. But they did live at the same time. They lived at the same time because they were created on the same day, on day 6. So God made animals and He made man. That would have included these giant reptiles, and reptiles that became giant reptiles, dinosaurs. Evolution says they lived long before man did. No, man was here with the dinosaurs, and had no problem living along dinosaurs. There's evidence for that in the scriptures as well. The man was a man of a common ancestor. No, we have a common creator. We have a common creator, that is God. That is the Lord, yes. So, that is, I have one more thing, but we will stop there since we used enough time already. I appreciate y'all's attention. And as always, the invitation tonight is open. If you have a need if you have a need of any kind, prayers or need support in any way from the brethren here, we would be happy to help meet that need. And you have an opportunity to come if you have a need as we stand and sing a song of invitation.